We are live with Lunch Break Live. We're with the fabulous Holly Skodis, creator of Yoga is Vegan. Holly, what are you making today?
I am going to make one of my all-time favorite dishes, which is called mung beans and rice quesadilla style. So a really great recipe and one that I've loved because it was adapted from Yogi Bhajan's recipe of mung beans and rice. It was something I enjoyed eating at Hugo's restaurant in Los Angeles many years ago, and they forwarded the recipe onto their email list. And at the time it wasn't a vegan recipe, but now it is, and I've kind of switched it around so you have a low oil option if you want that as well. So I'm kind of going to do a mix of both today. But yeah, kids love it, adults love it. It's kind of a fusion between Mexican and Indian, and it's, it's a lot of fun. It's a great party food. So Paige, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to do this.
Absolutely. Let's get cooking. Let's see a lot of beautiful things there. Take it away.
Okay, so pretty much the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to use a pressure cooker to cook the mung beans and rice. It's find it a lot easier. You could do it on the stovetop as well. And what we're going to do is we need a cup of mung beans. These are sprouted mung beans. You can buy them that way. They are more digestible when you buy the sprouted version. You can also get the regular mung beans and sprout them overnight by soaking them in water. So I'm going to put 1 cup into the bowl in the pressure cooker. And then I'm going to add a cup of brown sprouted rice as well. So I'm going to put that in there. Once again, the sprouting makes it more digestible. And then we're going to add, I've got 4 carrots and 4 slices of stalks of celery already diced. So I'm going to add that in. And we're going to then include some onions and garlic, which is really interesting because a lot of times in yogic recipes, you don't use onions and garlic. So I found it really curious that that was the recipe as found by Yogi Bhajan. But, especially now that we have a pandemic, it's really great to up those onions and the garlic. They're anti-cancer, they're antibacterial, they keep your immune system really, really happy. So it's a nice addition. And if you're being a little more sapphic, you can always leave those out. And then, the garlic was 8 cloves of garlic, which is a lot, and 1 whole onion. And now we've got ginger. So this is fresh organic ginger, and that's a 1/4 cup of that. I think you could probably hear my dogs walking in at the moment. So, all right, so then we're gonna go into the spices and the herbs. So I'll start with the spices first. We're going to add turmeric. And that's 1 heaping teaspoon of turmeric. I'm adding 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. It calls for 1, but my youngest daughter's a little sensitive to spice, so you can adjust it accordingly. Same thing here. It's supposed to be a teaspoon of red crushed chili peppers, but I go ahead and use just 1/2. I personally like a whole, but we'll add a little spicy hot sauce onto that just to kind of spice it up individually. And then we'll move on to the herbs. So we've got 2 bay leaves, which I'm going to put in there. I'm still at the spice. This is garam masala. Once again, another big heaping teaspoon. I'm going to throw that in. We have cardamom. You can either use 5 pods or you can use the ground. I chose the ground, and it's 1 teaspoon. And then finally, we have some sweet basil. So the trick when you're making a dish in a pressure cooker is you don't want it to be too saucy, especially because this is going to be the filling in our quesadilla. So you want it usable when it's done and not too wet, because you don't want that falling out of the tortilla as you're making it. So the trick is to just fill, and I'm going to try and aim this so you guys can see it into the camera, but you're going to fill just enough water to cover it. So I'm going to pour about 1/2. I've got 4 cups of purified water here, and I'm going to mix it up and just see, hopefully you guys can see that in there. I'm going to mix it up and get it just wet, and it needs a little bit more. So I'm going to add it all the way up to the top here and see if that covers it, which it does. So really, maybe pull the view over here so you can see it's just to the top. So that's 4 cups with this mixture, but you could always add a little bit more or take a little bit away. It should be perfect. So what I'm going to do with the pressure cooker, and the reason I love the pressure cooker is you can get everything done and you can step away from it. You can do everything else that you need to during the time. So an important thing to make sure is that the seal on here is secure, which it is. And you just want to make sure that the parts are dry if you've used it before. So I'm going to close it up and I'm going to seal it. I'm going to make sure it's on the airtight level. And then we're going to set it for 20 minutes. And then we're just going to let it go. And while it's done, when it's done, we're going to allow the pressure to naturally come down. So when you're using a pressure cooker, probably a lot of people here know this, but you can either release it early and let all the moisture come out. But when you're cooking legumes, generally speaking, you want to just keep that pressure going down naturally because it's just part of the timed cooking process. So even though it says 20 minutes, it's going to take from beginning to end about 50 minutes between heating it up, cooking for 20, and then releasing the pressure naturally. So we're going to just let it do its thing. And in the meantime, I'm going to put together just some guacamole, which is for the top of the quesadilla. It's, I keep my guacamole really simple, and my family's found that they kind of prefer just like a garlic powder and an onion powder. Because sometimes you'll make a guacamole and you can add like your fresh onions and your fresh garlic and jalapenos and tomatoes. And I love all this, but for some reason the family just likes this, and it's a really nice shortcut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mash up the avocado, and then we're going to add a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of onion powder, and then half of a squeezed lemon. So you'll probably notice I cook without salt. And the reason I cook without salt is way back when before I was vegan, I got into whole food plant-based after reading the China study, watching Forks Over Knives, and looking at it from a health perspective. I had suffered with higher blood pressure. I had my cholesterol going up. My aunt, who is still with us, she had a heart attack in her mid-40s, which is really young, especially for the time. I know it seems to happen more and more these days, unfortunately, probably because our lives are more stressful and a lot of people are eating higher fat diets. But I tend to kind of go on the lower fat, lower salt initially. So when I make this dish, I omit the salt, and then whoever wants to salt it can then do it to taste, because that will reduce the sodium level. Instead of adding a bunch of salt to it and then having that added sodium, we don't necessarily need it for the taste. So that's why I'm doing that. I'm simply just mashing up your avocados. Fresh avocado is amazing. Something that you can do with this quesadilla dish is I will be using the Violife mozzarella shreds. But if you were to go completely, less added fat free, or like less oil, because there is oil in the cheese, then you could just simply put the guacamole on top, and that will give you that same similar, almost cheesy taste, but keeping it a whole food. So I kind of, at these days, after 10 years of eating this way, I don't need to be as strict anymore with the diet. But if that's a concern, that's something that you can do. So I've got my avocado nice and mashed. I'm going to then add the garlic salt and onion powder. And then we're going to squeeze the lemon juice straight into the guacamole. So.
Wow, Holly. I just want to welcome everybody to Lunch Break Live. As you can see, Holly is an instructor. She is a teacher. She just knows how to flow with the life of this Lunch Break Live. And she has been teaching for, oh my goodness, Holly, how long have you been teaching for?
Gosh, since 2011. What is that? That's 10 years, isn't it?
Wow, 10 years. And welcome everybody. So many people are curious about how to work with that Instapot. What would be your first step? Obviously pulling it out of the box, Tom. Yes, you want to pull it out of the box. And there's others who need to dust them off. And what would you say this is a great starting recipe, yes? I mean,
absolutely. I don't think there's anything hard to make in an Instant Pot, especially if you're doing something that just requires dumping a bunch of ingredients into the pot and following directions. The only thing you need to worry about is making sure that seal is on, because once upon a time, the pressure cookers were kind of scary. I think it was like the 50s when they were exploding and it was kind of nuts. So there's a lot of fear around them, but technology has changed and that has stopped. But the seal that comes in that inside of the pot, which I can't open because it's doing its thing, but you have to make sure the seal is in place. And it's kind of obvious when you're looking at it, because if it's pushed up, there'll be a spot where it just kind of pulls up too much. So you have to push that down and make sure it's fine and dry. That's really the biggest trick. And then when you open up that pressure cooker, if you're not allowing it to release naturally, the thing you need to be concerned about is if I were to, once it's cooking, move this knob over and open up the vent, you're going to get a lot of steam. So you don't want to get burnt. So you need to just take a spoon, make sure you've got a glove on, anything that's just going to protect you from the pressure cooker. That's really your biggest concern. But the best thing, especially since we're talking about only vegan food here, you can set this stuff up early if you're going to work. You don't have to worry about your food, contaminating and sitting on the counter. That's the brilliant thing about being vegan. You have so much more flexibility and safety in your food. So you could set it up and just let it stay for the day. But I do rice. Brown rice will cook in 20 minutes instead of 40, which is really easy. And beans are the easiest thing to cook in here. You soak your beans overnight, and then you rinse out your beans. You can add onions to it, garlic to it, or just keep it plain, whatever spices, you throw them in there. And it's that same trick. It's like sometimes they'll say you need a specific amount of water, and I find that's actually not true. As long as you cover everything up, you're going to be fine with your liquid, especially for your beans, or if you're making like a pinto bean where you don't want it to be as saucy. And then you set it up for the afternoon. You can stick a timer on it and just let it go. But usually start to finish, I would say like 45 minutes, maybe an hour to be safe, but you don't have to do anything or watch it or baby it. And I've set this thing to go when I'm not home, and everything's been fine.
Amazing. All right, so we have some guacamole here. Those of you that are just joining us, Holly has started Yoga is Vegan. She started it years ago. It is also a podcast top 30 on Feedspot. Look at that, of what you must follow in 2021. You are making a mung beans and rice quesadilla. All right, what's the next step?
Okay, so we wait, but I already have a batch that's already made. So we're going to heat up the stove. I'm going to walk around, and that camera will hopefully follow me. And you'll meet me up over here. So I have got a cast iron pan. I find these things to be the easiest to use, especially when you're heating vegan cheeses. Super helpful. So I'm going to heat up my pan. I'm going to turn it on to about medium heat, medium low. I've got a gas range that it's not always so consistent, but we're going to let it get warm. In the meantime, I'm going to just grab the tortillas. I'm using, I should have pulled the package for you, but I'm using the Food for Life tortillas today. They are rice tortillas. They're gluten-free. I just find that they're really digestible and they cook nicely. My kids love them, but you could use a whole wheat tortilla if you wanted to, an organic one. You can even do smaller ones with corn tortillas and kind of make it more mung bean and rice taco. But it's that same thing, just kind of picking your favorite kind of, element in Mexican food and just kind of pairing it with this mung beans and rice. So this is getting hot now, and what I'm going to do is I added a little high heat oil. Sometimes I use avocado oil. We were out, so I am using sunflower oil today, and I'm just putting enough onto the pan so that the tortilla is not going to stick. Let me grab my mung beans and rice, which I should have brought with me.
Thank you for joining us, everyone. This is so exciting. We have Holly Skodis with us. She is making the most delicious quesadilla you will ever have. Super nutritious and healthy for you and your body. Ooh, look at that.
Yeah. So this is what the mung beans and rice will look like when they're done. Unfortunately, this pot will take longer than this episode that we have going, but I made a batch earlier, and you can see you've got your mung beans, your rice, there's pieces of carrots in there, the garlic. It's so good, and it's got such a nice consistency that you can put it into that tortilla, and it will just kind of mash down and be super, super yummy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these tortillas, and I'm going to place it. Actually, you know what? I'm going to make it a little bit better today. I'm going to use the Miyoko's butter with it as well. This is a trick that actually came from my husband, who is good at making things taste really, really decadent. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys this. This is the oat milk garlic parm. I don't know if you've had this butter. It's the best butter ever. I'm addicted to it. I love it. I'm going to put just a little bit on to the tortilla. So I'm going to spread it on just like so. And you don't need to coat it. You just need enough on there so you can kind of get that super, tasty element and pick up the flavors without overdoing the fat. So I'm going to take that butter side down and I'm going to place it onto the cast iron pan. And I'm going to then take a spoonful of this mung bean and rice, and I'm going to fill it about halfway. So you just put a little on and start mashing it down. So you want a nice thin layer. If I were to measure this out, I would say you're going somewhere from probably about a half a cup, a third a cup of the mung bean mixture, and you're just going to get it on to the tortillas so it's nice. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add the cheese. And so I'm going to put that, actually I'm going to put it on this part.
I just want to say a shout out to those that are watching with us today. Welcome, Mary Ellen and Tina. We have Julie in that kitchen with us. Dominique, all the way from Canada. Karn, welcome to the show. Stephanie's watching. Tom, Julie, hello. Kelly from Clubhouse. Mary Ellen. Oh, let's see who else is in here today. We've got Tina. And I believe Betty Ann Cornwall is here as well with us. Phenomenal. Look at this. Tasty and scrumptious looking quesadilla coming together. Look at this, everybody.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really quite, easy. You're going to now get the other side. You can see there's a nice browning on this, so it gets a little crisp. And you just let it sit there, and that cheese is going to melt. Once again, it's the BioLife Parmesan cheese, or mozzarella shreds, excuse me, it's such a nice cheese. I also like the Miyoko's cheeses as well. The cheddar would go nicely with this dish as well. So I'm going to let this sit on the pan for maybe 1-2 more minutes and just allow it to get nice and crispy. And if I was making it for the family, we'd do 3 or 4 of these. And then we're going to cut them into cute little pieces. And you can serve this up at a party. You could have your yoga friends over. I like that it's a nice throwback to a yogic dish. It's similar to a khichdi, but it's not quite that. And it's, it's a really nice, digestible, but yummy food to eat. So that should be about done. Yep, that looks about perfect. So yeah, it looks pretty yummy. I'm gonna grab my plate.
We have a lot of definitely hungry folks that are watching here. Stephanie and everyone else who's in the house here with us in the kitchen. Holly, I want to take a moment while you're showing us this and tell us, what was the inspiration for creating Yoga is Vegan and the platform that you have? Tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, Yoga is Vegan is I think what struck me when I first started doing my teacher training was that a lot of yogis weren't honoring the tradition of vegetarianism. And it happened to coincide with what I brought up earlier about the going whole food, plant-based for health reasons. So I was reading about it, I was learning about what the benefits were, and at the same time I was getting ready to do a teacher training. And when I did that training, I decided, why not try to be vegetarian? And then shortly after, that's when I started going in towards the vegan. But the first thing that happened was I was made fun of at that first teacher training for being vegetarian. It was like, oh, look at what she's doing. And it really rubbed me the wrong way, because I thought, if we're yogis and we're supposed to sit and embody the seat of the teacher, we should really honor some of those traditional practices. So the more that I learned about veganism, and I learned about, what it means to be a yogi, what it means to work towards liberation and to start living in your life in a place of non-harming to not only myself, my others, my family, my pets, but beyond that, to all sentient beings. And so when you look in 2021 and you think about, well, if the ancient yogis were vegetarian because that was what embodied compassion at the time, shouldn't it be vegan now in 2021? Doesn't that just make sense? Now that the world has grown, the planet is so big, and our relationship to the cows is so much different. So I thought, well, that's my story, but what if I started sharing everybody else's story too? And that way we could have this platform where everyone could share how they found that connection to compassion, veganism, and yoga, and that would help inspire somebody else to hopefully embrace veganism. So that's why I started that platform.
Incredible, everybody. You can head over to find Holly at Yoga is Vegan. Look at this finished product. I think you're going to be cutting it into pieces. Amazing. Oh, that looks so, just so incredible. Yes, Tom. Yes, definitely. Namaste vegan going forward. Being kind to all beings. Yes. Thank you so much for this delicious food. And you're the mother of a few children? How many children do you have?
I do. Well, I have 2 kids. My oldest is actually not a kid anymore. She just turned 18 last week, believe it or not.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And so I have that, and I have a 15-year-old as well. And my whole family is vegan, believe it or not.
Wow.
Which is kind of incredible.
Beautiful. Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead and add the guacamole onto these quesadillas. Right, so that's fresh avocado. We have onion powder. We have garlic powder. Just serve it like that. People can dip it. And then I take my favorite hot sauce, which I'm going to grab it real quick. And then I'm going to go ahead and drizzle that on top. So for today, I'm using my favorite, which is called, it's Organic Harvest Foods. I don't know, have you ever tried this one? It's so good. It's a jalapeno pepper sauce. I don't know.
Ooh, let's bring it up close.
Yeah, I had actually had an easier time finding it in LA when we lived there. We've ordered it online, but the ingredients are really nice. They're pure, it's organic, and the sauce is pretty amazing. So if you like spicy food, what I then do is I just dribble a little of the hot sauce on top. And then you have it right there. That is your dish. That's your quesadilla. mung beans and rice, and it's pretty delicious. So
Incredible. You are going to find this recipe and hundreds more at janeunchained.com. Everybody head over there. Thank you, Holly, for joining us. Thank you, everybody who was watching today. Please share this out if you will. Be sure to share this with those that are on the journey, making their way to a more plant-based planet. And we just appreciate you so much, Holly. Yoga is vegan. Namaste vegan. And all ahimsa. Yes, yes, yes.
thank you so much, Paige. I so appreciate absolutely everything you guys do and everything that you do to just help spread compassion and kindness in this world.
We'll see you next time, everyone. Thanks again. Peace and blessings.